Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Wealth and Wisdom with Fred Belcastro from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich on Friday, February the 6th, the year 2015. And now, here is Fred Belcastro.
Smiling, when you're smiling, when you're smiling, when you're smiling, and the whole world smiles with you. And when you're laughing, oh, you're laughing, when the sun comes shining through. When you're crying, you bring on the rain. Stop your sighing. Won't you be happy again? When you're smiling, keep on smiling, and the whole world smiles.
Good morning and welcome once again to the Wealth and Wisdom program. My name is Fred Belcastro, your host, and I can be reached during the week. Any comments that you have concerning the program, email at fbelsecure, that's FBELSECURE at AOL.com. And of course, we're broadcasting from the John DeVita's Broadcast Center here on the Northwest Side. We can also be listened to at Jack FM 89.7 WRHS in Norwich. There's also a web site you could reach, Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network at www.windy. Don't you just love that word, Windy City, because it's so distinctive to Chicago and Chicagoland? Nevertheless, it's www.windycityhometown.com. Just spell out the words. All right, this morning we're going to add, instead of Did You Know, I'm going to change that segment to Truth Decay. And so a little bit after the first break, we'll get to today's Truth Decay. Several weeks ago, you've heard me play a song called Mersey Oats by the Pied Pipers. That's a song we heard as kids growing up in the 40s and 50s, Mersey Oats and Dozy Oats. And if these words sound queer or funny to your ear, a little bit jumbly-jivey, well, that's what we're going to talk about today. Not Mersey Oats, but words that might seem a little bit jumbly-jivey, because we're going to be talking again about the game, the PS&G model that we have. Remember, I said you've got to have a board game in financial planning so that you could vision, so that you could see, and you could hold accountable the various assets in your accounts. And last week we touched a little, and I'd like to just elaborate a little more on it so that it makes more and more sense. By now we all know about the eroding factors and how things that occur with financial institutions and the government, taxation and inflation, and how corporations use our money that we create and provide for our families throughout our lifetime. Now we could look a little bit about the weapons that we have to defend ourselves. So we have a multitude of investments, and we'll cover in the board game, in the model that we've created. We've covered each and every one of those investments. So if you're sitting back and you're saying, "Gee, I didn't know there was much more than a growth mutual fund or a growth and income fund or a life insurance policy or a credit union or maybe a 401k," we'll talk about that in weeks to come. We're going to this morning list most all of the investments that we could possibly put in our game board. But when we do that, we've got to use these weapons or these investments effectively and efficiently. They've got to fit. We can't just use, as I mentioned in the past, the last expert syndrome, that the last radio program or the last book we've picked up or the last brother-in-law or information that we've received or misinformation that we've received, plug it into our economic lifestyle and expect it to function economic or efficiently. Some of the investments, we've talked a couple of weeks about investments held taxable outside of shelters, shelters being tax shelters and deferred shelters. We have taxable investments like like your CDs. How valuable are your CDs against the eroding factors? How much protection do they give you? What value can we assign to those? And we assigned a 1 point to a taxable investment. A taxable investment, we've seen, whether it be a CD or a mutual fund, erodes tremendously with the lost opportunity costs, the taxes, and inflation. We really get beat down. Last week, I think we had an example of a 10% return on a mutual fund over a 30-year period of time, gaining 10% each and every year, compounding $25,000, and I think that went up to something like $425,000 in a 30-year period. 10%, anyone would jump at a 10% return. However, our net after the expenses came out to a little over 4 1/3%, 4.33, I think it was. But nevertheless, we assigned taxable investments because they're hit the hardest with taxation and inflation and opportunity costs. We assign them a value of 1. Tax-deferred investments, such as your annuities, a 2. Annuities are fine. They don't avoid the taxes altogether. They may defer them for some later point, but when we pay them, we may be paying them at a higher marginal tax rate than we are today, and so we've got to do a little something more. They're not the perfect investment for us. We've got to do something a little more with that annuity income than just leave it compound and accumulate. But nevertheless, they're a little better than a taxable investment as far as our board is concerned, as far as economics are concerned. And when I talk, it's another thing too. When I speak of these things, of assigning a value of 1 and 2, and it's taxable, and it's inflation, and lost opportunity costs, and technological changes, this is applied economics. You see, I've been in the, and I don't like to keep saying this, but over the last 50 years, financial planning hasn't all that much changed. Why? And it doesn't seem to have been as effective as it could have been or should have been, or actually could be, because of the lack of applied economics. If we're going to gain any headway in this economic world we live in, we're going to have to use some of these economic features, some of these protection modules in our own defense. All right, so we have number 1 and number 2. A third value would be a tax-free investment. That's certainly better than paying taxes. It avoids the taxes, not only the taxes, but the lost opportunity costs on those taxes that have to be paid. So we assign it a value of 3. Then assigning a value of 4 is something that's tax-free and tax-deductible. That would be a real estate income properties. This also real estate income, condo income that we might purchase. We could even purchase this condo in lieu of IRAs or 401ks, and they work out far superior. We'll get into that in another program or another discussion. But we would assign something tax-free and tax-deductible as well. Remember the municipal bonds, tax-free, federal tax-free. Now we have tax-free and tax-deductible. And then, of course, 5 points. Let's take tax-free. We can deduct it, so it's tax-deductible. And there might be a tax credit with that as well. So we assign that a value of 5. That could be agriculture or oil and gas or low-income housing that we may invest in. But that also may give us a tax credit, and so that would even be better than a tax deductible. That would be better than a tax-free, certainly better than a tax-deferred, and certainly close the door on that taxable investments. All right, now when we look, and here's where I talk about the mares eat oats, and words get a little jumbled, because I'm going to speak of things that you may be at this point a little unfamiliar with, because they haven't been presented to you as of yet. But if you could just imagine, last week I spoke of 3 components. We have a protection component as number 1. Number 2, a component of savings. Now, when I speak of components, and I thought, well, how could I best describe this so that you may capture a visualization of what I'm referring to and talking about? If we just each one of these components look at a Rubik cube. All right, that little square cube, and I don't know how many little drawers or little dots it has on it, but in our model, we have 9. Each of these components, each of these 3 Rubik cubes that I'm talking about or attempting to describe, will have 9 drawers, 9 buckets, 9 drawers or buckets, whatever you could visualize better, contained in that cube. So we have a cube of protection, a cube of savings, and of course a cube of growth. Which is the most important? The protection. As I spoke of last week, and I just touched on the oil and gas, and I said here's a number 5 value. It's a tax-free, tax-deductible, tax credit, maybe an oil and gas investment. Well, would we get into our automobile and drive down the street and take our trips and take the kids shopping and to soccer and to basketball and to school? If we didn't have automobile insurance, would we feel comfortable in leaving our homes or even living in our homes, going to sleep at night without having our homes properly protected? So as good as an investment might sound, it's negated by the fact that first has to be the protection component. This has to be in place. But when we look at these protection components, we've got to make certain that they're satisfying the need, that they're doing the job that they were supposed to be doing. So our auto insurance, what do I look at when I look at the auto insurance? Well, I look a lot at the low liability limits, high deductibles and low liability limits on the home insurance, which is the second drawer. Also, the third drawer along the top line that just gives us primarily protection would be our liability insurance. How many of us carry a personal liability insurance? Is there anybody? And also with our home, is it just the replacement value, or is it the actual cost? We've got furniture, and every one of us has purchased furniture, and some of that furniture may be a year, 2 years, 5 years, 7 years old. If you have furniture that's 10 and 20 years old and it's destroyed by fire, does your policy just say, well, now you hit a 20-year-old couch, some rough justice estimate here, we'll go to a flea market and replace it? Is that what you want? So you better look at your insurance policies, your home and liability policies, that make sure that the deductibles are reasonable and the full replacement and the values are replaced. Also, in the next tier, we have disability income. So first, we want to minimize the cost, at the same time giving us the major amount of protection as well. So when we look at the disability insurance, do we have disability? Does the firms and companies we work for provide disability protection? And if they do, is that for a period of 13 or 26 weeks as usual? And to what amount do they provide that protection? Is it going to be 40, 50, 60% of your wages? Can you live on that? Should that be looked at as well? Also, in the next cube we have, of course, we covered a disability. Years ago we had disability, and if I'm disabled, that means that the company will pay me so much a week or so much a month. And then you'd say, well, what do they consider disabled? And that's a very, very, very important phrase, because that's is it your occupation, or is it just the inability to perform anything gainful in employment for which you were, and there's the definition, for which you were reasonably best suited because of education, training, and experience. That's all. That's the old definitions. But that means that you could perhaps be retrained. Is that what you want to do? Be retrained? All right. Is there a cost of living adjustments? And then on down the line, we have government plans such as Social Security. Does your disability supplemented by any benefits you receive from Social Security? So if you're disabled in your occupation from work and you receive a disability benefit from the government or Social Security, are they segregated? Are they separate, or are they integrated as well, so that you'll only receive a maximum of 60 or 65%? In the area of medical insurance, how's your deductibles? Deductibles too low? Are you spending too much money on on premium and not satisfying some needs higher up, such as the long-term care as well. Let's, we've had how many deaths from shoveling snow did we have within the last couple of days? That too should be considered. All right, but let's consider some of these things when we get back right after our first break.
Oh, the weather outside is frightful, but the fire is so delightful. And since we've no place to go, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. Man, it doesn't show signs of stopping, and I brought me some corn for popping. The lights are turned way down low. Let it snow, let it snow. When we finally kiss goodnight, how I'll hate going out in the storm. But if you really hold me tight, all the way home I'll be warm. And the fire is slowly dying, and my dear, we're still goodbying. But as long as you love me so, let it snow and snow. When we finally kiss goodnight, how I'll hate going out in the storm. But if you really grab me tight, all the way home I'll be warm. Oh, the fire is slowly dying, and my dear, we're still goodbying. But as long as you love me so, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow.
Dean Martin singing, "He Wants More Snow." All right, now our segment on truth decay. Years ago, when we first started looking at these 401ks, we've had employers, it wasn't their fault because they're told by the companies that represent that there's marginal cost on these, 1%, 0.5%. Some of them because of the shade being pulled up on some of the costs involved with the 401ks, said, well, now they're down to no costs whatsoever to some of these companies. But a major problem that's gone unreported, it's unreported because the fund companies are not standing in line to reveal these costs to the consumers. If they keep them hidden, then you don't think about them, you don't know about them, and there's no questions. And then, of course, they don't have to do anything about it. But a study is released on March 17th of 2007 examined 1,706 mutual funds and the trading costs between 1995 and 2005. The trading costs are the turnover costs involved with the turnover costs. These are little-known facts. In mutual funds, they constantly buy and sell. No, don't get me wrong. I know they tell you to buy and stay with them. Keep your money stagnant. That's what they tell you. Isn't it true? Is it true? There's Joe Pesci again. Isn't it true that you're told by everyone you bought a mutual fund from is to buy and hold on to it, keep it for the long term? Remember we talked about the long term, we're all dead? The average has been 10, 12, 15, 22, 29%. We've deflated those figures, haven't we? In the programs prior to this, haven't we talked about what the actual figures come up to? Anyway, they're trading. When they do it, they constantly buy and sell and buy and sell and buy and sell. They incur costs with buying and selling and buying and selling and buying and selling. Do they pay the costs or do you? Let's see how that plays out. The study entitled Scale Effects of Mutual Fund Performance, the Role of Trading Costs. This was the University of Virginia Tech, University of Virginia, and Boston College. And it goes on to say that the average U.S. stock fund spends approximately $1.44 per $100 of assets on trading costs. Simplest terms, it means that For every $100 invested, $1.44 is taken out in costs, trading costs, not total costs, just trading costs from them buying and selling and buying and selling and buying and selling what they're telling you not to do. You say, well, let me tell you, they know how to make money, and they know how to make money because they convince you to give them their money. That's where they make the money. Do you think they have the, well, we go on and on. But the reason they have so much money is because they look at all the money they spend on advertising telling you to give them their money. And what do we do? The government gives us 401s that allow us to take tax deductions temporarily, defraying the taxes, letting that tax build up to a mountain. You see look out in the backyard, look out in the front yard. You see mountains of snow? That's the way they want your dollars to build up, because those are tax dollars. When you look at your 401k and you look at the results that you have, that's not your money. Only about 2/3 of that is. The rest of it is going to the taxes. Nevertheless, that $1.44 is what the trading costs are. Stephen Horan, head professional of education wealth at the CFA Institute, estimates that trading and transaction costs for stocks add 2 to 3% of cost to a stock mutual fund each and every year. Trading cost turnover ratios can be much higher. For instance, CGM Focus in 2009 had a turnover ratio of 504%. You see? That means that their stocks, their complete portfolio, turned over 5 times. 5 times. And each time they make a trade, there's a cost. And they pass that on to the individual. They pass that on to you and I. American Century Equity Income, that's a stock fund, mutual fund, had a 296% turnover ratio. Fidelity, the Fidelity Advisor Mid-Cap Fund, had a 244% turnover. Thus, if a mutual fund had a turnover ratio of 250%, which these all did, that would cost your mutual fund 2.5%. Add another percent for asset management fee. Oh yeah, in addition to that, they manage it, right? So there's a 1% asset management fee, and a meager 3/4 or 75 basis points for other fees, and you would need 4.25. 4.25. You have to earn 4.25 just to break even. Is that the truth? That's the absolute truth. And is that disclosed? Not always. You have to dig pretty deep in order to uncover some of these costs. All right, well, back to our PS&G model. We can go on, and I could spend on just these 9 drawers of protection. We could spend about an hour, especially when you have the government plans. They're going to now start sending out information on that as to what you have accumulated, making certain that they have the right Social Security numbers for you, so that everything you've contributed is being put in your account. And so that takes care of some of the assets and income, but also assets, income, and life, your wills. Remember, we first got married, we made simple I love you wills. Everything is passed on to our wives. Well, what happens if situations have changed, family structures have changed, as life takes a bigger bite out of each and every one of us? So make certain those wills and documents are as they should be. Also, any trusts and ownership, and the life insurance. Do you have the wrong type of insurance? Did you buy the cheapest on the go because you thought you were saving money? Have you looked at what that's costing you as far as lost opportunity costs as well? And some of these old policies, remember Mom and Dad used to take insurance policies out on the kids? How about some of those? How about some of those beneficiary designations? We've got to look at this. These are things that were done in the past, just like when we were in college listening over at Doobies. I went to Western Illinois, so some of you fraternity brothers can still remember listening in Doobies jukebox to songs like this.
nel blu, dipinto di blu, felice di stare lassù. E volavo, volavo felice, più in alto del sole ed ancora più su, mentre il mondo pian piano spariva lontano laggiù. Una musica dolce suonava soltanto per me. Volare, oh, cantare, oh, nel blu, dipinto di blu, felice di stare lassù. Nel blu, dipinto di blu, felice di stare lassù. E volavo, volavo felice, più in alto del sole ed ancora più su, mentre il mondo pian piano spariva lontano laggiù. Una musica dolce suonava soltanto per me.
Volare. Who could not remember Domenico Mondugo? No, you probably didn't. A lot of people that, I don't know how many songs he's made since then, but that's what we listened to. And of course, now you know I went to college back in the 50s. I was at Western Illinois. If we, getting back to our model, I can see our time is running close, and I want to do it justice. One of the things that has bothered me in the past, and of course, well, it's fairly recent, is this area of life insurance, where we have an expiring death benefit. I've had so many individuals, good friends of mine, that have come to me with policies that have run out, and we find ourselves now at 60, 65 or beyond without any insurance, because these term insurance the premiums become astronomical. You could renew a 10-year term for a reasonable figure up until maybe you're 45, 50, 55, and then it becomes astronomical, because the insurance companies know that the only people that will pay these $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 premiums for $70,000 and $80,000 of benefits are people that need it badly because of poor health or circumstances. So these are something to look at. When we look at the beneficiary designations, they may be outdated. Maybe there's spouses that are no longer, for one reason or another, a spouse. I don't know, significant others we have now. Whatever the case is, make certain that all these names are in place and the dates of birth and Social Security numbers are on these. All right, let me just mention the two components that we have left are the savings component and growth components. And this is where we assign the values. This is where we use these investments, these savings programs, as a symphony. This is where they work in harmony. This is where they work effectively and efficiently to carry out our wishes and our choices. We just don't buy something off the shelf. We place it, and they've got to work together. As I mentioned, a symphony. I'll mention and talk about that in the weeks to come, now that we have a concept or an idea that there's three segments: the protection, the savings component, and of course the growth component. All right, and if it takes a Rubik cube or three of them stacked on top of another, or whichever way you'd like to do it, to have you visualize and know that you've got to have a game board, and you've got to have rules to that game board, and you've got to have someone looking over that game board to make certain that these these investments and these savings programs are not separate. We don't save separate. We don't invest separate. Always, through the years, I've always heard people say, when the kids get out of high school, we'll have it made, honey. They don't say that to honey to me, but they say it to their spouse. And then when the kids get out of college, we'll have it made, honey. And then once we get on our feet, we'll have it made, honey. And it never happens. It never seems to occur. Why? Does erosion mean anything to you? Well, my time's just about up. I look forward to this discussion again next week. In the meantime, listen, be kind to one another. Treat one another with courtesy. Help your neighbor as much as you can. Make somebody smile. We'll see you next week. All right, have a great week, and be kind.
When you're smiling,
When you're smiling,
when you're smiling,
when you're smiling,
and the whole world smiles with you.
smiles with you.
And when you're laughing,
When you're laughing,
oh, you're laughing.
oh, you're laughing,
When the sun comes shining through.
shining through.
When you're crying,
When you're crying,
you bring on the rain.
bring on the
Stop
rain.
your sighing.
Stop your sighing.
Won't you be happy again?
Happy again.
When you're smiling,
When you're smiling,
keep on smiling.
keep on smiling.
And the world will smile with you.
Let's go now. Let's go, Sam.
You have been listening to Wealth and Wisdom with Fred Belcastro from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norge and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Friday, February the 6th, the year 2015. This broadcast was directed by John DeVita. Our special thanks to radio station manager Kevin Zefalik of WRHS FM Norwich and the executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, Mr. John Chiconda. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Wednesday, February the 4th, the year 2015. Until next time, please be safe and thanks for listening. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM, Norwich, Illinois.